Hello from a glorious sunny West Cork, and hello from the future. About the beginning of December, I'm giving you a little update here because one of the things we've been asked about the very most is about the plans. What are we doing to the farmhouse? And what exactly was your reasoning for that? So in this episode, I'm going to cover those topics. I'm going to give you a sneak peek to the future. You're still about 4 months behind, but I'm working very hard. I think I'm going to produce maybe 2 videos a week just to bring you up to speed. But I want to get you up to speed as quickly as possible. You can see the farmhouse is looking very different than what you're probably used to it. We're just taking off the roof now on the YouTube playlist. But as you can see, we're a lot further on really. So in this episode, I'm going to talk to you about what we were doing, why we wanted to move, and what kind of a house we were looking for. I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the issues these have, for example, damp, cold, stone structure, and maybe some of our philosophy for approaching those problems. And finally, I'm going to show you the designs. I did all the designs myself. I used free software that I just downloaded. Very good 3D modeling software, and that allowed me to also do a bill of materials to figure out how much materials I was going to need when I went to order the materials. Without further ado, let's get into it. I'm recording on my phone. Claire's inside actually doing some tiling. I can't see myself, hopefully it's okay. So one of the things we looked for when we decided we wanted to make the move was we wanted an old house, but specifically in Irish, how would you say, Irish vernacular architecture, Irish vernacular planning. We were looking for a pre-1963 house. Now what does that mean? It means all of the houses before 1963 had no records of them, and any house post 1963 had to have their planning submitted and records of the floor plan or the roof or whatever done to it. And there was a lot of extra things in this day and age that goes with that. You know, your driveway has to maintain a certain line of sight to the road, and of course way back then it didn't really matter because a lot of the roads were tracks and a lot of entranceways only took horses and donkeys and maybe some cows. If we had a post-1963 house and we wanted to make changes, we'd have to comply with whatever regulations they'd be, so the entrance would have to be set back, and I think we'd need like 90 meters visibility on both sides. I'm not sure if I've showed you the entrance to this place, but we have 3 entrances and all of them wouldn't work with current planning guidelines. There is a little bit of risk with that because obviously current guidelines are a lot safer, but you also lose a little bit of the authenticity of the property. So when we were doing our search, we wanted a pre-1963 house so we could have it as close to original as possible. If it was pre-63 and no planning was done to it, we know it hasn't really been updated in almost 100 years. In the case of our house, what we've discovered, and we might go into this in some of the other videos which are yet to be published, but we think the bottom of the house may have been a cottage, and around the turn of the 20th century, around 1910 or something, we think maybe the top of the farmhouse was added, because they're 2 very different building materials and construction methods actually. And the gable on both sides are different as well, so we can see this gable was traditional, that one wasn't. So when you're looking for houses, try and get a pre-1963 house. It also means you can just reuse the footprint of the property. So in our property we had buildings on the west side, or on the east side, buildings on the west side and buildings on the north side. So we took them down and we rebuilt them to be more insulative. And I suppose that brings us around to the second point, which is the kind of philosophy we have to these buildings. I'm deliberately giving you a few sneak peeks. You'll have to watch the videos to figure out how it all came together and what's on the inside. And unfortunately, I can hear the washing machine has just gone on a spin cycle, so it might be difficult to hear me. I'll come a bit closer. How about that? Snug. So the philosophy, right? So these old buildings are made of stone. I can't do this recording. So you found your pre-1963 house, and what should you look for when you go for it? One of the biggest issues with these properties are damp and moisture in the stonework. Most of these houses actually were built facing south, as you can maybe see by my winter sun, and that's to maximize the heat that you get during winter, because they were very cold and damp houses. However, when they were built, they used a lime mortar, which is a quite breathable material, and the roads outside, or the paths outside, were either earth or they were stones. So moisture and damp wasn't really an issue back then. It was only in the last kind of few decades or 100 years that we started to use a cement render on the inside and outside, and also we put cement paths around the buildings. What that meant is moisture couldn't naturally come up through the ground, and it was kind of channeled in to the stone walls, and the moisture would rising damp up through the stone walls. But because there was a cement render on the front and back, it couldn't get out. And that's pretty common with a lot of the issues with the houses around here. So what you'll find a lot of people doing is they'll get the house, they'll take off all the render, they'll dig up the concrete floors, they'll put down a breathable material and maybe lime-created, but also on the outside they'll have to channel all around the house and put down French drain or something to take the water away and just give it a lot of chance to be dry and to breathe. For us, we were aware of that, so one of the things we were looking for is actually a house that's on a slope that has naturally very good drainage. That's exactly, I don't know if you see it here, but the land kind of goes down like this. Dampness isn't so much an issue with us. We have one corner which we kind of have to look at, but really we'll get to that later, but basically our house is really dry anyhow. And because we're on a slope, we've raised up the level on the the east and the west side, so I don't think damp is that much of an issue. What will be an issue is condensation. So from people inside breathing or from cooking, we want to make sure that the moisture can get out through the walls and come in through the walls. That's the issue with that. Another reason houses will get damp is that issue with condensation. It's very difficult to put insulation on these old houses. What tends to happen is people will just attach insulation to the internal stone wall, either with a stud frame and just insulate in between, or they'll try to stick polystyrene. You may have seen that in our earlier videos. A lot of these houses in the 60s had polystyrene that was just kind of like glued to it, and what that meant is that just rotted everything right behind it. You got dry rot and wet rot from it. The kind of current trendy thing to do is to put external insulation on the property. That's only slightly better, but it's still not perfect. What we did, which is kind of new, I think, I haven't seen many houses do it, but we took the philosophy of external insulation. Well, rather than slapping it onto the side of the farmhouse, we added rooms. What does that mean? It means we put 175mm insulation next to the gable, but pushed it out 3 meters and put that insulation in the side of the building, and that became our bedroom. We did the same insulation at the back of the farmhouse, but pulled it backwards, and that made the corridor going down. So what we're calling this is an envelope design. So the farmhouse itself is actually enveloped by an outer structure which is super well insulated. It means the internal walls of the farmhouse can be left exposed in their natural state. In ours, we don't have pretty stonework. Actually, we have pebble dash, which, you know, maybe a purist might chisel off, and you know, you can have lovely stonework exposed. But for us, it was a farmhouse. It was a very kind of traditional, very kind of a, not poor, but it wasn't a glamorous house, or it wasn't an affluent house. So we just want to keep it original. So when we walk through the house now, you'll be able to see the original walls on the inside and out. And we don't need to put insulation on them, or we don't need to worry about damp or kind of moisture or condensation, because our insulation is stepped back and it's timber framed. So we did the same thing with the roof. The roof comes straight back here, and that's all insulated all the way to the back. So the only bit that's exposed is the south facing wall. That's the one at the front. But as I told you, like 200 years ago when these properties were built, they wanted it south facing because it warmed up the property, and in modern terminology we call that a heat store. So we have almost 1 meter thick walls, and the sun shines on them during winter, and the heat is transmitted into the building through radiant heating, And when the sun goes down at night, the walls are still that bit warmer, so they keep the place a little bit warm. Same thing happens in reverse in the summer. The walls actually keep the room cold. Almost feels like you're stepping into a cave a little bit. So that south wall is very important to have on these properties. You don't want to put any insulation on the front of it or behind it. If you put it on the front of it, the sun ain't going to get to dry it or to warm it up. If you put it on the inside, yes, the sun will warm the wall, but you're not going to get that radiant heat from the thermal mass is what it's also called. So for our plans, we have absolutely nothing on the front, no insulation, and we're going to use that thermal mass during summer and winter. So the west, the east side, the north side, and the west side, we have a lot of insulation. The only other thing we don't have is upstairs. We have no insulation. When we got to the upstairs, it's actually cement blocks. So it's a different construction to downstairs. As I say, I think the upstairs was added around the 1900s. So what we've done up there is we've added a stud wall. Now I was putting a stud wall on the front anyway, because the roof, you'll come to that in a while as well, the roof needed a little bit of extra strength. So we put a stud on the front and we were going to insulate that. While we were at it, we said, look, let's just throw a little bit of extra insulation on the gable sides. And the roof is already insulated going all the way down to the bottom. So our whole house is an envelope essentially. Originally, actually, I didn't want to put any windows at the back of the house. So the north facing windows, it doesn't get any sun basically from, I don't know, from about the end of September to the start of February. There's no sun up here. So we weren't going to put windows. I'm not going to see it. We have a big picture window there, just down here, because we have exceptional sunsets in the summer. So that was one thing to think about. So, next topic. So the final thing we wanted to talk about is glazing. So whilst we can make sure the farmhouse gets as much heat as possible while still maintaining breathability, moisture kind of flow and airflow, we also wanted to limit the sort of cost on heating with the rest of the building. So what we did with that is we have very large windows on the south side of the house, and this in the extension here. And what we want to do with that is create a thermal mass in the concrete floor that we put down. So we put about 50 mil of screed, 50 to 75 mil of screed. Underneath that we have some underfloor heating, and underneath that we have around 180 or 190 millimeters of insulation. Underneath that we have our damp proof and loads of rubble. So we only have a very small bit of screed, but we have huge windows. So even now the temperature inside is very, very warm. The sun is just pouring in and our windows are quite high for two reasons. Number one, to catch that extra solar thermal mass during the winter. Number two, the stars here are unbelievable. My good cameras are kind of in storage, so I haven't been able to show you, but at some point I will. Some of the most spectacular night skies down here. There's an observatory across the way. It's one of the areas with the least light pollution in Ireland, and it's just breathtaking. So I wanted to push the windows up high to capture the sun, but also to capture the night sky. These double doors are facing west. Spectacular sunsets through our trees, as maybe you'll have seen in a few of the videos, or maybe I'll throw in now. And eventually, not for the grant, not on our current timeline, but we're going to put a raised deck here so you can come out. It's not done at the moment, but so yeah, so that's our kind of plan. And on the north side, as I say, we weren't planning to put any windows in, but you know, the views around here were so spectacular, we took the hit. And the reason for that is there's no point having glass on the north side, because you will just kind of like heat will go out through it. So we maximize all our windows on the south side. We put a little bit for access, so we have a sliding door on the west side, which is our kitchen, a sliding door on the east side, which is our bedroom, and very minimum windows on the back of the house. So our philosophy for building the house is this envelope technique. So we envelop the farmhouse in insulation, we maximize thermal mass, and we reduce any kind of cold bridging that'll take moisture out. We put a lot of insulation in the floor, walls and ceiling, and we apply some small bits of heating. So we have a little bit of radiant underfloor heating. We have a little bit of infrared heating, which we're testing at the moment. And we'll probably go with it, actually. We're quite happy with the infrared. We're running everything on electric, so eventually we'll be completely off-grid. At the moment, we're off-grid sewage, off-grid water, and we're just using electricity while we build, but eventually it'll be completely off-grid and self-sufficient. Kind of along the same thing with the philosophy. You'll have seen us recycle quite a lot in this property. We want a simple way of building, the way the locals would have built a long, long time ago. They reused a lot of the material they had. In fact, our neighbour Mike told me the rafters here in this barn, I won't show you now, but we're standing in the barn that I took down in an earlier episode. I took those and I reused them for a solar mount, and when Mike came over, he said they were already third hand when he put them in the barn. They came from a different barn in a different part of West Cork. So there's definitely a philosophy of reusing what you can, but also of using what's close to hand. And like, it's nice to have nice things in a house, but if the kind of aesthetic just goes like crazy cost, or we could have gotten someone to do all this for us, it would have cost a lot of money, but we're capable of doing it ourselves, and it's nice to learn how to do it ourselves. And we want to learn, and we want to be able to maintain our house for future going forward, and we know where everything's put, we know how everything's constructed. So I think for us, that's also part of our philosophy. We also want a little bit of self-sustainability. So next year now, hopefully we'll see a little bit more going on in this field, which is going to be about where we'll have some fruit and vegetables we're going to grow. We're going to plant quite a lot of trees. We're just kind of pricing them and trying to find them at the moment. And we're going to have some animals as well. So a lot coming there next year. So the philosophy is reuse what you have, recycle what you can, use locally sourced products, materials and companies, and just get stuck in so you can do as much as you can yourself, because they're good skills to have. I mean, try and find a builder or a plumber or electrician now, it's very difficult. And then in the future, if something happens in the middle of the night, you can fix it. Talk a little bit about software. The software that I used is called FreeCAD. It's a type of AutoCAD which is used for structural engineering, for architecture, for interior design, but also for like component modeling, product design and 3D modeling. It's a little bit difficult to use. There's certainly a learning curve. I'm using about 5-10% of the functionality to design this house, but as soon as I kind of got my momentum, it's actually really, really good software to use. I would recommend it. It's free. What I did basically, and I'll show you in a minute, is I took the floor footprint and I measured the width of the walls, and I was able to build my frame up like this. Based on your footprint and the depth you want to go down, it'll tell you like how much concrete to order. So when I was thinking about building the two extensions on the east and west, I was raising the floor level. There was already concrete footprint there, but I was putting insulation on top of that, and I was putting a screed on top. This was able to tell me how much I needed, so when I spoke to the builders merchants, I could order the correct amount of lime and sand and builder's gravel was what we really use. It was able to tell me then how much I needed for timber framing, and then for the insulation I was able to take a measurement again about the height, width and depth, and it told me how much insulation I needed. For the rafters it was the same again. I counted every rafter. Again, it was 400 centimeters apart, and I was able to calculate now the Tyvek. So we put a damp-proof membrane on the outside of the roof and the walls, so that helped us calculate that. And when it came to order the roofing material, which you can't really see here, the roofing material came in bits of, I think it's about 1.2 meters, and it has maybe a 20 centimeter overlap. So that helped us to calculate how much of them we needed to order. And the company we chose, they cut everything to length. We specifically were able to measure 3 meters on the front, 6 meters on the bottom, and 7.9 meters on both sides, and they cut everything to us to length. What else do we have? We have like wiring and plumbing. It told us how much we needed. It's pretty important to have some sort of a software like that so you can plan everything. Now we left it at that. We could have gone a little bit further and had a wiring and a plumbing model to tell us where every socket would go, every light would go, and we could run the wires and we could calculate how much wires we needed. But I kind of ballparked it, and if I need a little bit extra, I'll go for that. Definitely recommend the software. Should I use any other software? I don't think so. It helped us also to take measurements for the window guy. When we ordered the windows, he had a guy that would do 3D models of the windows, so we could supplant those windows onto our model just to see how they looked. So here's a good example of that actually. Originally we were having a 5-meter window here. When we did up the plans in FreeCAD, it didn't really look right. It was like too big a space and it wasn't somewhat proportioned to the rest of the house. But also FreeCAD were able to figure out the dimensions that we'd need for the lintel. So I was a little bit worried. Firstly, I didn't want to use steel in this house. I wanted to use as much wood as possible, you know, the sort of thing that would have been available long ago. So I didn't want any steel lintels. But even if I put the lintel in, I was just worried about torsion and the ability to like take the roof, let's say, and to not twist. Like, it's not a very heavy roof. In fact, it's a very light roof, but I was still concerned that in a strong wind I wanted to be as, you know, rigid as possible. So I decided actually to try and put the center post in the middle and try two 2.5 meter windows. And when I was going through the plans and the models for that, it actually looked way better. And I'm not sure I would have been able to decide that if I didn't have the models. So both from a structural sense and an aesthetic sense, it's definitely beneficial to use the software. If you don't have a house picked out, like, download the software anyway and find a farmhouse. They're all the same, these farmhouses. They're all about 5 meters deep by 10 meters in length, 2 up, 2 down sort of buildings. So just play around with them, look at what houses are available, get familiar with the software, and start to play with it. So when your house does come along, you've skipped that learning curve. You know the sort of style and aesthetic you want, and you've a good idea about the structural requirements that you need. Okay. Hey, look at this. Okay, so now we can see FreeCAD. Let me show you around an earlier one of my farm. Why? Because, like life, our relationship, some things must be kept secret, and I want you to be surprised when you see the house that I'm building. So this tells you about 90% of it, but there's a few kind of differences. Because this is an earlier version, it's not complete, so you can see the rafters here are protruding beyond the ridge. This was because I wasn't sure how much of an overhang I wanted. As you can see here, the front of the building is the same level as the farmhouse, whereas currently the front of the building is recessed a little bit. So you get to see all those sort of things in FreeCAD. I also was looking for some windows up here. I didn't actually do that in the end, and I lowered the height of the roof. Probably because, if you can see outside, we have some electricity cables, so I just wanted a bit more space. With FreeCAD, I wonder, can we see that here now? I have the ability to turn on and off. Yeah, let's look at the roof. Let's say the farmhouse roof. So I've taken all the rafters off that. I've taken the roof off. So now I can actually see the floor. So this floor told me how much OSB I needed to order for the floor itself. The stairs goes in there. Same with the roof. This space told me how much corrugation I needed to order, and also how much Tyvek I needed to order. Right behind that is these really long, I think it's about 8 meter. Can we see? But if I go back through the shed roof, now we can see there's a bit of this is a few boxes to simulate my sofa. This is a box to simulate where I thought I was putting a stove, but it's not actually there. This brown box in the middle was the islands that I thought I was going to use. Now with this box, actually, it's slid up, so it's more of a peninsula. And the brown box across the back wall here is essentially my kitchen. My kitchen will be all the way along the back wall. We're putting the stove in the middle, peninsula here, and kind of a living space there. We did go with this long window, so I knew I had to reduce the number of studs to support that. Is there anything else? Like, we still have the double doors there. I just measured all of these walls and they were able to tell me, let's say, this was a weird side at the back. So if I zoom out, this is kind of a lot of our farm. This is the space right in front of the house, so we wanted to keep clear. This is a top garden and we actually put our caravan right here. We have a little bit more land here, a bit of a forest there, and yeah, we can space these things out, and these are our barns. As you remember, I had to cut this barn up here to make way for the bottom corner of this building. So this is the existing wall right here. I actually ended up taking that down and I just made a beam to go across it. That was another consideration, was could I keep any of this stone? I actually couldn't, so I didn't. And we wanted to have in the piggery, what you'll have seen, we were actually going to leave this as kind of a conservatory. Kind of we were going to put a glass roof and a glass wall on it and have it kind of walking through the original piggery. But the depth was just too low when Claire excavated, and it would have been like stepping down to the floor of the piggery and stepping back up to the corridor or the bathroom. So we decided to actually just abandon that plan, and truthfully, keeping the roof going completely down means that we're going to have less likelihood of leaks. We had a single door here. We actually ended up putting in a double, and pretty much the same again. Like, I mean, it's pretty basic. So here I can select each rafter itself, or I can select a group. I can minimize the group. This is the floorboards at the first floor in the house. Actually, no, sorry, the floorboards are covered by OSB, so this allowed me to measure how much OSB I needed. And then we can see I was going to change these floor joists actually, but I didn't bother, basically. The camera just ran out of batteries. But let me just wrap up by saying this is quite close to the final house that we have built. This was enough to give us an idea to find sizes. Again, this is an early draft. So there you have it. Little bit on our designs, little bit on our philosophy, little bit on what to look for in a house, a little bit of a sneak peek into what we're doing. Hope this video is useful to you. I know we got a lot of questions. I hope this answers some of them. Let me know if it doesn't. I just want to say thanks again to every single one of you for watching our videos. I'm amazed that you spend your free time to kind of see how we're getting on our own journey. Appreciate every comment, every view, every subscribe. We're almost at 1,000 now. It's amazing. We never in a million years thought 1,000 people would be interested in this, so thank you all again for that. This is difficult to do this on your own. It's difficult when we both have full-time jobs, and it's really difficult during the winter when we finish off at about 5:30 in the darkness and cold, and we wander over to our farmhouse and our fingers are freezing, and it's like, it's not pleasant, but we have to do it to hit the timeline. And I absolutely want to say that all of you guys give us great motivation and inspiration to continue sharing little snippets with you and just providing a little bit of joy and sharing that around to the community. So you guys are helping us, and we hope you get a little bit of value out of this as well. And again, we just want to say thanks to all of you, and hope to see you and talk to you in future updates. So I've just had a cup of tea and I realized I forgot one thing. the wife. So Claire was inside working really hard tiling, which you're going to see looks unreal choice of tiles, and she's doing a great job. First time ever tiling.
It's quite enjoyable.
But I forgot to include you in the update, so I'll let Claire have a few words about the whole thing that I just explained to you, how we looked for a house and what we did, our designs to kind of deal with some of the issues, the software we use, like, and basically to thank all you guys. So, I mean, is there anything? I know I covered everything, but anything else?
I think one thing that you could say is that when we first wanted to take on the house, we just or a house, wherever it was, we looked at. I'm sure lots of people have looked and looked and looked, and lots of things looked right and they weren't right and whatever. But anyway, by the time we found this, and would have been the same wherever we were. We didn't want to come in with JCBs and diggers and flatten the whole area so that then, it's nice so you can just keep, up you go with your house. We wanted to work with what we have. And by that I mean is that all the trees that surround the house, there's a beautiful stone wall that's all the way around the house.
The wall, yeah.
If we had come in with diggers and decided to scrape it all back, we'd have lost all those features. And it's a lot of people have come to me and gone, why the hell did you get a mini digger? Now, not to say that we won't get a mini digger, because there are lots of things we are still going to have to do, like dig a French drain, and also connections from the caravan to the house will have to go underground. So we will have to do that. But at the moment, we will do that in a way that doesn't destruct the surroundings of the house. And as a result of that, we haven't disrupted any of the wildlife. It's crawling with wildlife here. We hear foxes under the caravan at night, because we everything we've just left, and we've just arrived and plonked ourselves here, but we haven't. Now, that's not to say that we won't have to take a few trees here and there down. We have got ash dieback on a couple of trees. We've already been told they have to come out by a tree surgeon, but they'll be done in a way that that's I suppose sympathetic to the environment.
She's got a tripod.
But the thing about it then is because of that approach, it was hard graft, and we had to put in the digging, as you saw, because we've done a lot of the digging now. But all the digging at the back had to be done by hand. And that was a decision that we made because we didn't want to knock anything that just represented part of what the farmhouse was.
And a big shout out to the kind of community members who have dubbed Claire the machine in the comments, because she just keeps going and going and going and going and going. And it's way better than a mini digger if you can grab a machine.
It's become a bit of a kind of a passion as well. We both really, really enjoy it, and I suppose we both do. We don't have the worry of work, whatever, because we're both full-time working. Now that also brings its problems in time wise and that, and you can't get enough done, I feel, every day. But we are really, really enjoying it, and but yeah, no, but we never envisaged. I guess we put it on YouTube. We wanted to record it, not as we would normally do a photo book every year of our family, which would include all of our activities for the year. That would include all of us as a family. And so when we started this house, we felt a photo book wouldn't give it the justice, and we also wanted to be able to see what we had done and how we did it. And so we started to put them up on YouTube, not thinking that we would get the response that we have had.
The kids have no interest. The kids have no interest in the house, but we know in the future they will. So
yeah, it's nice to have that. It's nice to have it recorded. So a big thank you to all the support, because it's those little comments that just keep you going in the evenings when it's dark at night and bloody freezing. That somebody is, or you might be inspiring somebody to do something a certain way or whatever. Not saying that anything that we do is the right way, or probably more so the wrong way, But you try to inspire people to do the same, because I feel in Ireland at the moment, as you all know, housing is an absolute disaster. And if we just couldn't inspire a couple of people to go on and take this on, and take on their own little project, I feel we've done something. And we've also saved another property from just sinking into the ground like the others.
If I could get a T-shirt made up, which maybe we will for West Cork Wander, I would say it's not difficult, it's hard. So there's nothing impossible or beyond your abilities. It's just really hard. So it's nice to be able to show that.
Yeah, it is. It is.
If you don't mind rolling up your sleeves, you can do absolutely anything on one of these old houses. So many people say, you buy an old house, you got to knock it and spend 500,000 to rebuild it. That's nonsense. It absolutely is. We are being very luxurious in our approach, because we're doing things like changing the roof. Like, you don't have to do that at all, really. So
so that's it, really. So thank you to everybody for the continued support, because it's something we didn't ever think about, or how it wasn't the reason for starting a YouTube channel at all, but it seems to have suddenly grown with very little on our side. But now we feel we have to put a little bit more effort in.
There's a bit more pressure with people following. Like I've always said, I don't want to ask people to subscribe. I mean, you use YouTube, presumably. If you want to subscribe. But then what I would say is that I've been uploading every Thursday at 6, but we're like 4 months behind. So especially over the Christmas break, I'm just going to try and get through as many as possible, upload them all as possible, because I want to be up to date with you guys, and I properly want you to be experiencing this with us. So that said, the only time I tell you to subscribe is now, because the videos won't be coming up every Thursday at 6. They might come up anytime, really. So if you want to if you don't want to fall behind in the process or in the order of the videos, just leave a subscribe, and you'll get a notification when they come up.
Playing a bit of catch up with them now, and we see how beneficial it would have been to have them go out in a more recent time, because people have suggested how to do things and how to go about things. But of course, we're way ahead now. It's too late for that.
Yeah.
So it's nice we realise that people want to help or want to give their ideas. So you're missing out on that if you don't have it in a relatively recent or real time, I suppose.
Yeah. So let me finish off by saying we really appreciate you all. It means a lot that you're giving us your support. So if we can help in any way whatsoever, just drop us a message and we'll try and help you in any way back. So that's about it. Thanks and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.